Woman Who Chat is sponsored by Grow Radio. Grow Radio is an online radio station dedicated to bringing you a different podcast on the hour, every hour. I'm proud that Woman Who Chat is played on Grow Radio every Tuesday at 3 p.m. and Friday at 8 a.m. and to be a part of their podcasting community. If you want to listen to the station, explore their shows, check out many of the blogs to improve your podcasting skills, or get your podcast onto Grow Radio, head over to growradio.uk today. Welcome to Woman Who Chat, and today I'm chatting to Mandy Rees, Mother for Life. Mandy, it's great to have you here. The award-winning Mandy Rees, I just have to say. We will chat about your award later, but first, do you just want to tell us what you do?
Yeah, so in a nutshell, I support women by bringing them together with other women. So I run circles, I run mother circles and pregnancy circles, supporting women through that transitional period into motherhood, being able to talk openly and honestly about how they're feeling and build communities. And I also mentor other women who want to run businesses doing the same thing.
So is this women who have had children or women that are about to have children? Or is it just any part of the journey of motherhood?
So I specifically work with women who are about to have children, so they're expecting babies, and then I do mother circles for women with babies up to 1 year of age. But I also do women's circles, so I also do women's circles and retreats for women, whether they're mothers or not, at all ages and stages. But I tend to work, most of the women that I work with are also mums, just because that's kind of the person that I attract, and my journey to motherhood was quite difficult. So I really want to support women who are mums.
Okay, so tell us a little bit about that journey, because you were a lawyer when you became a mum. So tell us a little bit about that and how the business came about.
Well, I was working full time as a lawyer, as a senior associate at one of the big firms in Birmingham when I had Grace, and I had postnatal depression after I had her, but I didn't tell anybody, so I hid it and I just battled on. I mean, I think it would have been very clear to those who knew me that I was struggling, but I was very much in that perfectionist, good girl, don't show anyone you're struggling kind of phase in my life. So I went back to work full time, 5 days a week after I had her. I actually ended up going to another law firm for a year because they offered me 4 days a week, then back to my old law firm. So that was really difficult. Carried on working. 4 years later, had my second daughter, at which point I did go back 3 days a week. But it was very much, I was paid for 3 days, but working 4+ days a week. I think the usual thing that lots of working moms experience. And my husband was also a lawyer, or is also a lawyer. So our lives were just absolutely crazy. I'd do the nursery and school run, get home, put the girls to bed. Then he'd come to home. Sometimes I go back into the office. We were literally just passing in the night, and I was pretty much run ragged. So that's when I took the decision to stop doing that job. I'd like to think it's different now, that there's more flexibility and more options for women who are mums to stay in law, and I think it's getting better. But certainly at that point, I worked for an all-male team who were not supportive at all of what I wanted to try and do. Because I'd find motherhood so difficult, and I know lots of professional women, it's just a huge shock to our everything. I knew that when I didn't law anymore, I wanted to do something, and my instinct was all, well, you need to go out there and support working mums to make that transition a bit easier for them.
Yeah, and I resonate with what you said, because I was working in a law firm. I had already got my children, but I was very much, even though I worked full time and I was sat at my desk at 7:30 every morning, way before most of them got into the office, because I shifted my day forward because I had the ability to do that, but I had to leave at 5:30 on the dot. I was called a part-timer for years, even though I probably put in more hours than they did, but they just didn't see it. I tried to make it work for me. And as you say, if there's they're very young people around you and maybe not in the same position, and they just don't see it, they just don't get it. And I suppose you've got people that have worked in law for so long that it's always been done that way, and they didn't see about the flexibility. And you're right, you worked 3, 4 days and was still doing 5+6 days and catching up evenings and weekends. So you were actually working more than when you were just full time.
Yes, and feeling that you weren't really doing that job well, and you weren't doing the mother job well either.
Yeah, beating yourself up really for no reason.
Yes.
So you started, obviously, the new business. Say new, it's not that new now. And what do you find is that the challenge for most women now that are working in corporate and having families? And I suppose managing the nighttime feeds, the sleep deprivation, everything around that. Are those still major challenges, or are women still leaving corporate and doing something else?
Women are staying because there is a drive now that corporates have to tick the boxes of having women progressing through the ranks. So it's a really difficult conundrum because it is getting better, but a big bit of me thinks it's getting better because it's ticking a box rather than there's an actual will and a desire to make a difference. Lots of firms have return to work policies. You can have kit days now. There are firms who have coaches to help their mums returning to work, but the feedback I'm getting is that they're not making that much of a difference, but they're ticking a box in terms of what the firm's having to do to satisfy its clients, its KPIs, and all that kind of stuff.
Well, that's sad, really, isn't it? That it's a box ticking exercise, because I do remember when I was working in law, there were very few women that did progress, because close friends of mine would go off and have their children, ask for 4-day week, come back at 5 days, and literally within 12 months they'd left the profession.
Yeah.
And it was so sad to see them leave the profession because the workplace couldn't manage their flexibility.
Yeah, and I think it does very well. I know it very much depends on one, the organization, but also sometimes it's the team that you're in within that organization. So I can be supporting some women who are in the same company, but one of them is having a very different experience to the other just because their line manager or partner they're working for has a different view on the way they want that person to be supported. And it really comes down to that individual woman having the confidence in herself to ask for what she needs. And
Yeah.
that's what we're not very good at, women. We're not very good at saying, I'm really good at what I do, but in order to be able to be as good at it as I want to be, I need you to do this to support me. And
Yeah.
that's what I help women to do, to ask for what they need.
And I think it's also important to recognise that not every woman is the same. Some
Yeah.
women have natural births, some have cesareans, some have postnatal depression, others don't. Some have babies that sleep, others don't.
Yeah.
Every single woman and circumstances are different. So it's not a one size fits all.
No, it's not. And that's what isn't happening. They're not getting the individual attention that they need, but also women aren't coming together enough to share their experiences. Just if I'd gone back to work and known that there was another woman who'd come back to work at a similar time to me that I could have coffee with or just have a conversation with about what she was struggling with, how she was coping, what support she was getting or wasn't, that would have made a huge difference to me. And we're still not very good at being vulnerable around each other and saying, look, this is what I'm experiencing. What's going on with you? And that shared wisdom makes a huge difference.
And that's what you've created. You've
Yes.
created that so they can share these stories. How much are you finding this is helping them?
Oh, it's totally life changing. I mean, that's the biggest gift I've been given in my business, what, for 10 plus years now, is the gift of learning to love other women and to lean into their support and know that vulnerability is actually a real strength. And so when I had postnatal depression with Grace, I really did, I loved her, but I really didn't like motherhood at all. And I thought I was the only mother who didn't love it. Had I known that at least 80%, 90 plus of mothers don't love it all the time, that would have just changed my whole perspective and outlook. So women being with other women changes your life in ways that you can't describe on a piece of paper. It's just totally transformative. That's why I'd like to take circles into corporates. That's my big business vision, to have these spaces in these massive multinational organizations.
And that would be fantastic for women to have that group support, facilitated group support by you, the fact that you've got this experience, you've got this knowledge now, and you can bring it together for them. And I think it's so important. I'm a huge advocate for women supporting women. You know that. It's
Yeah.
what I do. But when I was in the law, I gravitated to male environments. And it was very much, I used to call myself the honorary bloke in the team,
Mm-hmm.
because I was the only woman a lot of the time. And it was that bloke mentality. And I call it that because that's what it was at the time.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know whether that's changed or not, whether it's still, who could stay up the longest, who could drink the most,
Yeah.
it was that very corporate. I could only say it like that. And that's not, no disrespect to the law firms that I worked at. It was just the way it had always been. And it needed something to change that, I think. And I think the work you're doing is fantastic.
Thank you. I think there are more women now role modeling. I didn't have any female role models above me that I actually really wanted to be like. There were women lawyers above me, but I didn't want to be like them. And they weren't very supportive because they had to survive in their world as you and I had to survive in ours. And I think now there are more women coming through. And actually, the younger generations of women will not put up with the nonsense that we had to put up with because we had no allies around us to support us. I've got two daughters, and they will not put up with the stuff that I used to deal with day to day. It doesn't mean they don't receive it, but they will call it out in a way that I don't think we had the strength or the wherewithal or just that support to be able to call out certain behaviours that do get called out now. So it is changing.
There was a fear element around it, I think, as well at that time. There was a fear of you wouldn't get on, you'd be seen as a troublemaker, you'd be seen as somebody who was awkward. And I do remember there was a couple of women that did speak up for themselves, but they were sidelined.
Yeah.
And I don't know whether that was intentional or not, but they was deemed to be awkward, and ultimately they left and went elsewhere. And that's so sad in a way. And the other sad thing, I think, is there was so many women that I trained with who never had children,
Yeah.
and because they wanted the career. And then it was the either or. You could only progress if you didn't go into motherhood. Now there may be a number of reasons. Maybe they didn't want children. That's absolutely fine. Not everybody has to have them. But how sad to be in a position where it was your career or a family. You couldn't have both at that time.
Yeah, and I had friends who actually made the brave choice to take sabbaticals from work because they were struggling to have children and took those 6 months off and conceived when they were out from the stressful environment of their job. But that takes a really brave step and a lot of support to be able to do that, to hold your job open for you for 6 months because you're struggling with something that's really important to you. So yeah, there's a lot there male systems for whatever reason, and this could be like 3,000 podcasts on this subject, and it's not necessarily the men in them, it's just they're not built for what women need to live because we're different. Men and women are different in our needs.
Yeah, it was lovely. I was working for an organisation not so long ago, and I wrote a menopause policy. And it's not just women have to go through things that men don't.
Yeah. Yes, we
And
do.
employers need to recognise that. But it was
Yeah.
lovely to roll out the menopause policy in a very male orientated environment, I must say.
Yes. Yeah, and also say there's a lot of really good men out there who are real allies
Yeah.
for this as well, for which we must recognize that people are trying to change the system.
And I think now, with mental health being a number one priority for a lot of organisations, the mental health of new mothers will no doubt fall into that, and people will be more receptive to the kind of thing that you want to introduce, I'm sure.
Yes, I hope so. Yes. I'm certainly getting more feelers out there and more people understand the concept of what I'm talking about. Whereas I think if I'd done this 10 years ago, they would have just not grasped it at all.
And I think the time is right,
Yeah.
definitely.
Yeah.
Well, the time is certainly right for you because you recently entered the Solopreneur Awards
I
and
did.
were an award winner.
Yeah.
They was called out on stage. So what made you enter?
Well, I think hanging about in your world where you're telling everyone that we need to enter for awards was one thing. But also, I don't value what I do enough. And actually, what I do, I know changes lives. And the awards process gave me the opportunity to really reflect on how far I'd come, where I was now, and where I wanted to get to in the future. So it almost acted as a mini kind of business planning exercise for me, which was really helpful because I have referred back to the awards entry because you asked us what we could think we're going to do now in 3 years and 5 years. So those are really good at setting goals. But also, I wanted to do something that celebrated me because that's what I tell all the women I support to do, to go out and celebrate yourself. But I don't actually walk that talk. So I wanted to have the opportunity to celebrate what I do and celebrate myself.
That's fantastic. And a lot of women have said that the process has been valuable. And the whole ethos with my awards is to give value to it. Because I don't just want to say, just enter, you might win, you might not. I want to give you value. So not everybody is a finalist, but I still wanted to give that value, that piece, that reflection piece that we don't get time to do. It's always the bottom of the to-do list. How often do you sit down and write about yourself and about your business and
Yeah.
where you've been, what you're doing, where you want to go? And that's the value in it. And also going through the judging process, that interview, it's quite daunting to get yourself across in a very short period of time. But the judges were obviously wowed by you, Mandy, and I just want to say
Thank you.
that they're given criteria and guidelines and everything, but it comes down to you at the end of the day and how you communicate what you do. And your passion is definitely there. If you're watching this on YouTube, when Mandy talks about what she does, you light up. And
Yeah.
the judges, you're speaking from the heart, you're speaking from lived experience. And so often, when we can talk from lived experience, it has far more value to our audience. And it's great that had you entered the awards before?
No, I have entered other awards before, but I hadn't entered these before.
Yeah. So that moment where you're sat in the audience and your name's called out, what was going through your mind at that moment?
Probably have I had my pudding yet? No, I was just thinking, ready to celebrate whoever went up there, and then your name gets read out, and then you think, is that my name or is that my name? And then the people on my table, like, that was you, go up and celebrate it. And then I think I was just really so excited. And then when I did my speech, I was quite emotional. I was very teary almost when I said some words. I was just so grateful and so thrilled. And I did think, what I do really matters. This has really validated that what I do really matters, not just to me, but I was able to explain it with some clarity to the judges and in my award submission. So I can explain what it is that I do. And that meant an awful lot to me. But yeah, I was just absolutely delighted and just really thinking, don't burst into tears right now.
Which is why I always put boxes of tissues on every table. Now I know I need boxes on the stage as
Yeah,
well.
you do.
There's very few tearful moments up there, even with me and myself seeing the emotion. And I've said to everybody that I've spoken to, the surge of energy from that room that supported each and every name that was called out was phenomenal.
Yes.
People didn't mind that it wasn't their name called out. They were just grab that energy. It was like a wave that came up with you to the stage and with
Yes.
every winner, which was lovely to see. And the support in the room from complete strangers, because you came on your own, you didn't know
Yeah.
any people in the room, and you left obviously with more friends than you entered the room.
Yes. Yes. It did.
Everybody willing you and congratulating you. So when you came off stage, obviously you didn't probably take in the words, they were sent to you afterwards, and we'll put
Mhm.
your winners' words from the judges into the show notes. So what was the reflection piece afterwards? What was that when you walked off stage, you sat down, we had a break, I think, in the afternoon so people could come and congratulate you.
Mhm.
What was that feeling like?
It was just so validating, I think. And I'm very much that you don't need external validation, and you don't, but it's lovely to have it and that recognition. And also because the judges were in the room, I was able to go and speak
Yeah,
to each of the judges. So that was really lovely to be able to have a face-to-face conversation with them that told me a little bit more than the words that they were able to give you to read out.
yeah,
And other women because I explained about my postnatal depression, 4 or 5 other women who'd also experienced it came and found me within the room to talk to me about what they were doing. One lady I hope to be able to connect with and support her in something she's trying to do around motherhood and sleep deprivation. So it was like I had a little community of people who it really resonated with, and that felt really uplifting to have that support.
yeah. And I think I know the lady you're talking about, Nicole Ratcliffe, and
Yes.
she has had the most awful journey with sleep deprivation, and she wants to go into corporates and explain that why people aren't performing is because they're sleep deprived, and it
Yeah.
affects productivity. And it's such a valuable message. And she's published a couple of reports now on how of the impact of sleep deprivation,
Yeah.
which is inherently one of the things that new mothers have.
But yeah, and it's one of the biggest things that we talk about in my mother circle.
Yes.
We can't do anything about it really that much because babies are going to do their own thing. But just being able to say, are you as tired as I am? And just say, well done for making it here. We see you. We know you're knackered. You're doing an amazing job. Makes a massive difference. But yeah, a bit like there's a menopause policy. There almost needs to be a sleep deprivation policy because it is totally debilitating.
Yeah, I think that's the lovely thing I love about Woman Who, from every awards I've ever delivered over the last 9 years. And people walk in as strangers, but they walk out with friends in a community, and they meet people they never would have met otherwise had they not been in that room. And that's
Yeah.
what I love. the fact it brings people together. I see collaborations formed, I see friendships formed, and it's amazing that you see them all sitting together in subsequent years.
Yes.
And they just come along, and there were probably about 50% of that room that weren't even there for an award. They were just there to support other people, which was
Mhm.
lovely as well.
Yeah.
See that support along the way. Now, sadly, we've run out of time, and I will include your judges' words and your links
Thank
in
you.
the show notes, because I think the work you're doing is really valuable, and I can see why the judges appointed you as a winner. But I'm coming now to what I call my mic drop moments. So, piece of advice or wisdom that you'd like to leave the audience with.
Don't do it on your own, and don't be afraid of other women. That's my biggest message. I used to be terrified of women or compete with them. And it's when I started allowing them into my life and being vulnerable and sharing my stories that I was able to grow and develop and transform and become who I wanted to be. So please reach out to other women. It will change your life.
Thank you. And today I've been chatting to Mandy Rees, Mother for Life, award-winning Mandy Rees.
Thank
Thank you very
you.
much.
Thank you, Sandra. It's been brilliant. Thank you so much for having me here.